The conflict between Rome and Carthage, known as the Punic Wars, was one of the most defining and inevitable clashes in ancient history. The tension between these two powerful civilizations was not merely a result of opportunistic rivalry, but a collision of two fundamentally different approaches to power and governance. The three Punic Wars, 264 to 146 BCE, that unfolded between them were the result of an unresolvable struggle for dominance over the Mediterranean world. This essay explores the roots of the rivalry, the inevitability of conflict, and the geopolitical and cultural factors that drove Rome and Carthage into an all-out war that culminated in the complete destruction of one of the most powerful cities in the ancient world. Carthage, a maritime trading empire. Carthage, founded by the Phoenicians around 814 BCE, was a powerful maritime empire located on the coast of North Africa, near modern-day Tunis. Carthage's strength was built upon its vast trading networks that stretched across the Mediterranean. Its wealth came from its ability to dominate the trade of valuable resources such as metals, textiles, and other goods. As a naval power, Carthage controlled critical trade routes, making it one of the richest cities in the ancient world. Unlike Rome, Carthage was primarily focused on commerce and diplomacy, maintaining its empire through alliances, mercenary forces, and a formidable navy. Its strategic position allowed Carthage to control the western Mediterranean, including the coasts of modern-day Spain, North Africa, and Sicily. Rome, a militaristic republic expanding by conquest. In contrast, Rome was a land-based power that rose from a small city-state to dominate the Italian peninsula through military conquest and political alliances. Rome's military might was built on the legionary system, with disciplined and highly organized soldiers. Unlike Carthage, Rome was not primarily a commercial power, but one that expanded its influence through territorial conquest. By the early 3rd century BCE, Rome had conquered much of Italy and had established itself as a regional power. However, Rome's ambitions did not stop there. It looked beyond the Italian peninsula for opportunities to expand its power and influence. This brought it into direct conflict with Carthage, which controlled much of the territory Rome coveted, particularly the strategic island of Sicily. The seeds of conflict, competition for Sicily. The first major flashpoint between Rome and Carthage arose over the control of Sicily, a fertile and strategically important island in the central Mediterranean. Sicily was divided between various local powers and colonies, but Carthage had established a strong presence on the western part of the island. At the same time, Rome had begun to extend its influence towards Sicily as part of its expansionist ambitions. In 264 BCE, a dispute in the Sicilian city of Messana provided the spark that ignited the First Punic War. Rome, eager to prevent Carthage from solidifying its control over the island, intervened, and the two powers found themselves at war. The First Punic War, 264 to 241 BCE. The First Punic War was primarily a naval conflict, as both Rome and Carthage sought control of the seas surrounding Sicily. Carthage, with its superior navy, initially had the advantage. However, Rome, despite having little experience in naval warfare, rapidly built a fleet and developed the corvus, a boarding device that allowed Roman soldiers to turn sea battles into something resembling land battles, where they could use their superior infantry tactics. After more than 2 decades of brutal fighting, Rome eventually gained the upper hand. The war culminated in the Battle of the Aegates Islands in 241 BCE, where the Roman navy defeated the Carthaginians decisively. As a result, Carthage was forced to sue for peace, ceding control of Sicily to Rome and agreeing to pay a large indemnity. Between the wars, the growing hostilities. The peace after the First Punic War was uneasy, and both powers prepared for further conflict. Rome's victory in Sicily gave it a foothold in the western Mediterranean, but Carthage, under the leadership of the Barca family, sought to rebuild its power by expanding its influence in Spain. Hamilcar Barca and his son Hannibal saw Spain as a new base from which Carthage could restore its fortunes and eventually challenge Rome again. The rise of Hannibal and his intense hatred of Rome, instilled in him by his father, set the stage for the next conflict. Hannibal's expansion in Spain alarmed the Roman Senate, and when he besieged the Roman ally Saguntum in 218 BCE, Rome declared war, initiating the Second Punic War. The Second Punic War, 218 to 201 BCE. The Second Punic War is often considered one of the greatest military confrontations in history, largely due to Hannibal's daring and brilliant tactics. Unlike the First Punic War, which was primarily fought at sea, this war would be characterized by Hannibal's audacious land campaigns, including his famous crossing of the Alps to invade Italy. Hannibal's invasion of Italy. Hannibal's march over the Alps with tens of thousands of soldiers, cavalry, and war elephants was an extraordinary feat of military logistics and determination. Once in Italy, Hannibal won several major victories against Rome, including the Battle of Trebia, 218 BCE, the Battle of Lake Trasimene, 217 BCE, and his most famous victory at the Battle of Cannae, 216 BCE, where his forces annihilated a much larger Roman army. Rome's resilience. Despite these devastating losses, Rome did not collapse. The Roman Republic adopted a new strategy of attrition, known as the Fabian strategy after the general Quintus Fabius Maximus, which involved avoiding direct battles with Hannibal and instead focusing on weakening his supply lines and harassing his forces. Scipio Africanus and the invasion of Carthage. While Hannibal waged war in Italy, Rome began targeting Carthage's holdings in Spain and North Africa. The Roman general Scipio Africanus proved to be a brilliant commander, defeating Carthaginian forces in Spain and then launching an invasion of North Africa. This forced Carthage to recall Hannibal from Italy to defend his homeland. The war culminated in the Battle of Zama in 202 BCE, where Scipio Africanus defeated Hannibal in a decisive engagement. Carthage was forced to surrender, pay a massive indemnity, and cede its remaining overseas territories. The Second Punic War marked the beginning of the end for Carthage as a major power. The Third Punic War, 149 to 146 BCE, the destruction of Carthage. Despite its weakened state, Carthage managed to recover economically in the decades following the Second Punic War. However, its revival was viewed with suspicion and fear by the Roman Senate, particularly by influential figures like Cato the Elder, who famously ended every speech in the Senate with the phrase, Carthago delenda est. Carthage must be destroyed. Rome found a pretext for war in 149 BCE, when Carthage violated one of the terms of the previous peace treaty by defending itself against a Numidian invasion without Roman approval. This led to the outbreak of the Third Punic War. The Third Punic War was brief compared to the previous two, but it ended in the complete destruction of Carthage. After a 3-year siege, Roman forces under Scipio Aemilianus captured the city in 146 BCE. The city of Carthage was burned to the ground. Its population was either killed or sold into slavery, and the land was supposedly salted to prevent future habitation, though this is likely a myth. The inevitable nature of the conflict. The wars between Rome and Carthage were inevitable for several reasons. Geopolitical rivalry. Both powers were expanding into the Mediterranean at the same time, and their interests inevitably clashed over control of key territories, such as Sicily, Spain, and the islands of the Western Mediterranean. Economic and cultural differences. Rome's expansionist militarism was fundamentally at odds with Carthage's mercantile empire. Rome sought territorial control and political dominance, while Carthage prioritized trade and economic influence. These differing priorities made peaceful coexistence nearly impossible. Historical enmity. The personal and political animosity between leading figures in both civilizations, such as Hannibal's hatred for Rome and Cato's obsession with destroying Carthage, added a layer of inevitability to the conflict. Both sides saw the other as a threat that needed to be eliminated. Conclusion. The end of Carthage, the rise of Rome. The wars between Rome and Carthage shaped the future of the Mediterranean and set the stage for Rome's transformation from a regional power into an empire. Carthage, once the dominant naval and trading power in the Western Mediterranean, was utterly destroyed, and its territories absorbed into the Roman Republic. The conflict between these two great civilizations was inevitable, driven by geopolitical rivalry, economic competition, and cultural differences. In the end, Rome's relentless militarism and political resilience allowed it to triumph, while Carthage's reliance on diplomacy and mercenary forces proved inadequate in the face of Rome's unyielding expansion. The Punic Wars not only decided the fate of two empires, but also marked the beginning of Rome's dominance over the Mediterranean world, setting the stage for centuries of Roman rule.